Sarah is so important to the will and the plan of Yahweh that even in her death, she is accomplishing something very significant, very strategic for the kingdom. Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 1 of Chayei, the life of Sarah. And let's go to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 23. The first 4 verses say, "And Sarah lived 127 years, the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from beside his dead and spoke to the sons of Het, saying, I am a sojourner and a settler among you. Give me property for a burial site among you, so that I bury my dead from my presence." So this couple has originally 62 years earlier. Imagine that, 62 years earlier. They left their entire world familiarity, the known world to them at that time, to live in a land that they had never seen, following the voice of someone they believed to be the Creator speaking to them. They journeyed and traveled in nomadic fashion throughout the land of Israel. They had one challenge after the other, test after test after test, defining, refining their faith and their belief in Yahweh. They were challenged, super challenged, by the promise that Yah gave to them that they would have a list of descendants, a number of descendants, so numerous, in fact, that they would be even as the stars in the heaven. Well, I'm sure that they imagine Sarah's going to start just having child after child after child, and in fact, she was barren. The promise was that their heir would come, and it would be from Yahweh. Yahweh was going to do this. The problem for them was, being barren, they were wondering, how do we make this happen when the natural means of doing so doesn't seem to be working? There is something wrong with this, and it produced a great deal of anxiety about how to bring the promise to pass. This is no different than many of you, and myself included, that we have received what we know to be the word of the Most High. Yah has given to us some direction, a promise, a goal, an agenda, and we set out to accomplish it, and it's just one failure, one roadblock, one brick wall after the other. And it's like, how do I make this happen? After a while, the promise changes and morphs into basically a means of anxiety and frustration only. Where is the fruit of this promise to me? It seems that I am unable to do what you're asking me to do. Yah is great at giving us prophetic promises. What he doesn't seem to be very sharp about, at least in our imagination, and only there, is producing the fulfillment of what he says. The question then might be asked, why then does he choose us when we are going to be prone to failure? Evidently, there is then a goal or a lesson to learn that is so powerful and so big that he puts us in the impossible situations to teach us that it's still possible. How does this happen? Well, here is the key. Are you ready? It's believing more in the promiser than being pressured by the promise. I'll say that again. The key is to believe more in the promiser than being pressured by the promise. We receive this word, this goal, this calling, this something from him, and we take all of our time, effort, and attention, and we focus on that. The key is to not focus on that, but rather to then keep our focus on Him. It doesn't mean that we're idle, doesn't mean that we do nothing, doesn't mean, well, we're just going to sit back and see how it happens. No, we find Him, we seek Him, we go after the promiser, and in the pursuit of the promiser, it will come to our hands, it will come to our opportunity to see accomplish what it is that He's wanting to do. Romans chapter 4, verses 19 through 21 read this way. And not having grown weak in belief, he did not consider his own body, speaking of Abraham, already dead, being about 100 years old, and the deadness of Sarah's womb, he did not hesitate about the promise of Elohim through unbelief, but was strengthened in belief, giving esteem to Elohim. There's your key. Being completely persuaded that what he has promised, he was also able to do. They had to come to the place where they realized, okay, this is beyond natural means. This is beyond just a couple producing children. There is something powerful here that is beyond increasing family. So, the promise of the covenant is the Brit Mahazarah V'Haaretz. What does that mean? It is the covenant of the seed and of the land. The covenant that Yah gave to Abraham is very significant in those two parts. Number one, and probably the most important of the two, is the seed. You see, Abraham couldn't just produce a seed. It couldn't be just Ishmael or any of the sons that he had with Keturah. It had to be a very specific son, one that would come only by the miracle working power of the Most High. And that means that it could only come through Sarah, for whom it was impossible to bear a child, even not only being barren, but now she had gone beyond the bearing age or even the menstrual cycles necessary to conceive a child. She was postmenopausal. It was impossible. So Yah did the impossible to bring about seed who would be the progenitor of the seed that is Messiah Yeshua. Yeshua did not come to the lineage of Ishmael or any of other sons of Abraham, but only through Yitzhak, for it's in Yitzhak that your seed is to be called. The second part of that promise or that covenant was, and it's extremely significant today, the land. Everything right now, politically and ultimately in its full expression, is about the land of Israel. Who owns it? Who has a right to it? What should it be called? What are its borders? It's only inhabited by those Jews, and if we can just deal with the Jewish issue of the land, then we can really use the land the way we want to. Well, the land is very significant. At this point, Abraham, for 62 years, has been walking through the land, and he doesn't own a square inch of it. Yah has made him a promise back in chapter 13. You stand here, you look in all the four directions, and everywhere that you look, I'm going to give this land to you and your seed. It's interesting that he was standing close to Hebron, which is where he's now standing, where his wife Sarah has died and is needing to be buried. The solution then, even in her death, is that Sarah prompted a need of owning land. And Abraham then takes a significant step in bringing to pass the promise that Yah had made. He looks to purchase land. They tried to hand him some land and basically lend lease it to him. He says, no, I want to pay the price for it. He's wanting to get the title deed in his hand, that he actually has bought the first piece of property in the land called Israel. Even in death, this woman accomplished something strategic and significant. Imagine what we can do while we're still living. I hope you're living tomorrow. I want to see you then. Until then, shalom.